What's it anchored to?
You know, for me, I think a lot of my definitions have been defined by my actions. And so I am the person who has done these things, and I will do things that will get me closer to the things that I want to achieve. And so a lot of my definition of self has always been based on evidence. And so I think it was harder for me in the beginning because I didn't have evidence to support what I hoped to be true about myself, which at the time wasn't. I mean, it was, I want to make more money than my dad. You know what I mean? That was the thing, you know, for me, and that was all I needed. You know what I mean? I didn't have, I remember thinking in college, because you're young in college and it's like, be happy and all that stuff. And I just remember being like, fuck happiness. And that was like a moment for me. I was like, fuck happiness. I don't care about happiness. I want to do this. So I was so obsessed with like positive psychology, and I was reading all these stuff and watching these TED Talks. I remember this whole period of my life. And I was constantly assessing my mood as a determination of whether I was happy or not. And it became so obsessive that I was just like, fuck all of this. I was like, I'm just gonna do shit. And that's all. I was like, I'm just gonna do shit and hopefully it works out. And
did you ever define what works out means? If it isn't happiness.
Be less unhappy, I would say was my thought process, which was like, I'm just gonna do the things. And so I shifted from a lot of introspection, internal mood regulation and thinking and stuff. And I think a lot of the reason that I have the worldviews I have about, you know, emotions and whatnot have come from this kind of initial experience. So it's like I had that, and then I just started working, and then I found myself actually looking up after, you know, a decent period of time, being like, you know, I haven't thought about happiness in a long time, and I think I might be. And so I also don't really like the word happiness because it's circumstantial versus joy, but like I experience joy significantly more now than I did then when I was younger. And I think it's partially because like you can be mournful and joyful at the same time. So imagine someone like, it's like an appreciation of the human experience. Like, this is terrible, but like even in the suffering, there's beauty in that. You know what I mean? Because it's purely human. I think it's just understanding both sides of the coin. I feel so like if there's few things that I believe, it is that like right now there's things in my life that I don't like that I wish were better, and there are things in my life that I really like, and 10 years ago it was the same way, and 10 years from now it'll be the same way. And when I die, there will be stuff that I will not have accomplished that I will wish I had. There will be things that I wish I had done better that I will not have done, and there will be things that I have done that I am proud of. And so like those things are not going to change. And so if the only thing this sounds hopefully not overly trite, but it's like all I can do is just enjoy the game. And it took me a really long time to get there. Like, it took me a really long time to get there. Or at least it felt that way, or at least it felt like I suffered a lot on that process, which is why I have a heart for people who are like, dude, I'm super sad, I'm super depressed, whatever it is. And it's because I judged myself so much on not being happy all the time, because I thought there was something wrong with the fact that I wasn't happy, that I drove myself insane not being happy, rather than just being like, you know what, maybe I'm just gonna do the stuff and just fuck happiness for a minute. And so I think it's like when we have these, like, am I happy, am I not happy? I think my opinion is that you have to rise above it so that you can just see, you can feel the spectrum, which is just being present. Because I think, again, Alex's 2 cents, haven't been around that long. If you are present, you're present. Like, most people aren't present ever. And so it's like, if I can just be present, even in my suffering, I'm there, right? Then I can experience joy for being human and having this experience that I only get once. And the biggest frame shift that I've had in terms of my experience of living has been, it sounds weird, but it's something I'll call the grandfather frame, which is I learned how to become apathetic, right? Because that took me time to stop feeling pain. The frame of the veteran taught me that, which is, if this negative thing were to happen 1,000 times over and over and over again, how would I feel on the 1,000th time? Well, probably not that bad. Well, why don't I just choose to feel that way now, right? And so that really helped me a lot, just the frame of the veteran, right? Whether it was traffic, whether it was a breakup, whatever it was, I could apply that. Like, if I got broken up with every single day for 1,000 straight days, how much would it bother me? I'm like, well, I'd still be here, okay. And then I was like, is there a way that I can think of a frame that would allow me to feel gratitude? Because it's something that I've struggled to feel. right? Like I definitely get the drive feeling. Got that one done in spades. But gratitude, not so much, right? I've done the habits and things like that, and for me, it didn't work. I'll say it doesn't just for me. And so I thought of this frame, which was, I call the grandfather frame, but waking up, if I went into a time machine, I'm 85 years old, right? I'm like close to dying, a little creaky, I've got tons of money, not a lot of time. And I somehow sacrifice all the money I have just to be my age again. And so I wake up in the morning and I'm my 85-year-old self living through my 30-year-old body. And thinking through that frame of how I would wake up and be like, oh, my elbows don't hurt. Oh, look, I have muscles. I haven't had those in forever. Right? And I'm like, oh, Layla, she's so young. I remember when she used to look like this. And I look outside and I'm like, man, this is Vegas before they did all the helicopters and the flying cars. I'm like, look at it. God, it's changed so much. Right? And then you walk downstairs, you're like, man, coffee. Look at these mugs. Remember we had mugs. Isn't that crazy? And so it's this weird frame where it just drills you, it just pegs you to the present. And you get to experience the current state from a future state for the first time. And so it's been one of the things that's been really profound for me in terms of like dealing with stressors, with getting into like, when I get into one of these, like, I'm like, hold on, I'm 85, I'm waking up. I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I remember when I used to stress about these business things. I was like, it works out, it's fine. And if it doesn't, who cares? I was like, I'm gonna be 85, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna give all my money away. Who cares? And I'm like, but isn't this cool that I'm like, look at me, all trying to play the game. I'm like, you got it, bud. And so it's like, it gets me into this really interesting place where I can feel like I can get above myself in the game and just be like, whew. And I think for a lot of people, if they can, those frames have served me very well. And I hope that other people can use those in some way in their life to do stuff that they weren't otherwise going to do. So anyways, that's my two frames that have served me well. When we started the conversation, it was like, why do you think people aren't successful? Why do you think people fail? And I think it comes down to those things. It's like, it's the fear of photons that fall on an object that prevent people from starting, or when they do get hit one time, extrapolate that out till their deathbed and say, I will fail forever, and therefore I will not continue. And so I think that those frames are the things, like if there's things that I would take with me until I die, it will be the frames. Because like you can lose it all, and then like if you lost everything tomorrow, you'd be back in 12 months. You know what I mean? And I feel like I remember when I lost everything the second time. And I just lost all the gyms and all the money and everything. And it was just like thinking that was the thing that I had lost, rather than the thing that I had gained that was non-material, being the more valuable of the two. That was like one of my big lessons. And I feel like you obviously have far more of those than I do, but that one stuck with me. I think the difference between like rich people and poor people, successful people, not successful people, is the degree to which they attribute or give power to their circumstance, right? And so the difference between a self-made billionaire who started with nothing and someone who else started with nothing is not the resources, obviously, because they both started at zero. So what else is it? It's their resourcefulness, not the resources. And so if we give power to circumstance, then we cast power outside of ourselves. If we give power to other people, we cast power outside of ourselves. And so it's controlling the controlled. And when I say that quote, a lot of that is how, that quote is how I see selling. It's people cast power to their circumstances, and my job is to get them to unfuck themselves around the power that they have just cast to something they cannot control. And so if I can just get them to even just own the fact that they suck, that's good enough, because they actually can own it, and there is pride in that. You can take pride in the fact that you admit that there's a deficit, right? But the only thing you can't take pride in is casting and being a victim, right? Like no one moves forward. Even if you're right, it doesn't serve you, right? If you're born with one less leg than you should, you're right. You're not going to be, you have a disadvantage at being a sprinter. Like you have a disadvantage, but it doesn't serve you in any way to admit it.